Nuguam Likios, Gayu Klina Komox, Glu Quaguch. So the traditional name that I carry is Likios, and my English name is Jessie Everson. I primarily represent the Quaguch tribe from northern Vancouver Island, around Port Hardy area, Fort Rupert. And I also primarily represent the Comox First Nation, which is from here in the Comox Valley all the way up to Salmon River area. And I also come from the Ahousaht First Nation over on the west coast of Vancouver Island, and the Big Stone Cree Nation from northern Alberta. Culture has always been a big part of my life. It's always kept me grounded. It's also given me a sense of meaning and purpose to my own life and a sense of responsibility. Growing up, I always learned from my brothers and my sisters and my nieces and nephews learning culture. But all their teachings, they all came from our elders or our knowledge keepers, our Ninoxola. And so the teachings, they've come down generation to generation, and my brother Andy was fortunate enough to learn directly from our grandmother, Utmagilis, Margaret Frank, and she had actually lived through a time where she was born in a big house with a dirt floor, had lived there for a few years till she moved into a more modern style house. But the things that she did when she was younger and growing up in our potlatching system is much different from some of the things that we do today. When people, Ya'yumar, they have play potlatches for the kids, at times they'll have it in a gym, or they'll want to have it in the big house, but that isn't the way that they used to do it. My mom has always told me that my grandmother, when her parents would go to ceremony into the big house, the kids would play in the field, and that's where they would practice, and that's where they would learn how the potlatching system works together. And it was a way of learning, and without the masks, without the regalia, it was a way of learning so that you could mess up without having to deal with the real thing, because when you mess up in ceremony, there are pretty big consequences, and at times it costs a lot of money, and it there's a lot of repercussions depending on what you did. And so it was a good way of learning. And in my mom's time, she had actually, during the time of the potlatch ban, she had actually been given names over the dining room table. Because of the potlatch ban, ceremony couldn't be held in the big house, and at times excuses were given, such as Christmas and birthdays, to give out gifts to the guests, because that's the way that a potlatch works, is that at the end of a potlatch, the chief and his host family gives away gifts to the people to show how wealthy they are. Our people show our wealth through how much we give and not through how much we have. Different families, they've all different dances. Some families have a seagull dance, some don't. Some families have the mountain goat dance, some don't. But it doesn't matter how much you have, it's how much you give. And that's one of the important teachings that have come down from the old people. And it's always been so important to me personally to take those teachings to heart and to give. My niece, my auntie June Johnson, she had started a culture group up in Campbell River a few years back, and I've been a part of it for a number of years now. And I've sort of taken this sort of a leadership sort of teaching role to teach the younger ones how to dance and sometimes sing. But without her resilience and knowledge to the culture and how important it is to teach these young ones and people like myself to help keep the culture alive, without someone like her, it's hard to say where our culture would be today. The resilience of the old people, the people who have are cultural knowledge keepers. Without them in the past and the ones that we have now, our culture would not be where it is today. The resilience that was through and through the potlatch band, it carries on today, and we continue to be proud of our culture and who we are. I always find it interesting when people come up to me and they talk about how they're like a colonizer, or like a white person or whatever, and they apologize for what their people have done, but it's not what they've done, it's what their ancestors have done. And it's the same thing with, it's not what we've done now, it's what our ancestors did many years ago to keep our culture alive. And I just find it really interesting that people have that sort of point of view and they sort of get it mixed up. My mom, she's an elder, she's a knowledge keeper, and she's always had the reminder to myself and my siblings and my nieces and nephews to always remember who we are and remember where we come from, because that's who we truly are. And my grandmother, she always had a saying to not mix up cultures, whether it was Kwakwaka'wakw and Coast Salish, or Kwakwaka'wakw and prairie style like powwow dancing and stuff, to not mix up the cultures, because they come from separate areas and they're their own thing. With the summer employment that I've had for the past few summers, I've been working with the Comox First Nation Guardian Watchman Department, and basically what that is all stewardship. So it's all environmental sort of protection, preservation, restoration sort of projects. Some of the stuff includes protecting the grass that's down in the estuary from all the geese, because they really like, there's a certain type of grass, I can't remember what it's called, but they really like to eat it. So part of what the Guardians have done is put a fence around the edge of the estuary, they've put a fence around the edge of the estuary to protect the grass, and it's actually done pretty well. It's brought back the life to the estuary slowly. But with that summer employment, I not only get to be outside, but I get to protect something that I really love and really enjoy. Being outside, being able to be on the water, that's probably one of my favorite places to be. And to be up in Salmon River area and to be able to look up on the mountains and think about back to the stories of different ceremonial dance societies and them going up into the mountains to find their supernatural gift, and seeing from the water how high some of the mountains are in the Sayward Valley. It's like, whoa, like that's a ways up. And it really puts into perspective how our people used to live, and how they used to be. I'd actually learned a few summers ago from Jessie, and he's the anthropologist that works for Comox First Nation. And so we'd gone to Northern Quadra Island to go look at old village sites, because the Comox, the Sathlut, had actually lived there at one time. And we could actually see house depressions in some of these small islands. And in this one particular small island, Jessie had figured that it was sort of like more of like a warrior, sort of like a lookout post. And at times, so there'd be an older warrior, and then at a particular time, a young man would come and sort of apprentice under him and learn from him, and just spend months and months on end there with them, learning how to protect the village and look out for the village. And it's a teaching that I really, really find interesting, because it just really just have that understanding of just like how different it would be to spend months and months on an island that's just outside of your village, away from your family, to have that separation. I feel like it'd be really different, but it'd be a really fun, and it'd be a very good way to learn. And I've seen some cool things though with the Guardians. I've seen grizzly bears, parpas, sometimes when we're doing bull kelp surveys, we'll look down in the water and there'll be a sea star or a sea urchin or sea cucumber. It's really neat. It's just neat to look down in the water and see it all living when you're in a small bay, or to pull yourself through a bull kelp bed with nothing but just the kelp, and don't have to worry about your paddle, because otherwise it just gets stuck and tangled up. It's and then when you're out in the woods and out on the mainland, when we set up trail cams, because the Guardian Watchman Department has been doing this grizzly bear study. So at times there'll be either one or two people setting up the camera, and then whoever else is there, their responsibility is to look out for the others. So there's been a couple times where I've been given there have been a couple of times where I've been given a can of bear spray and told to go stand on a log like 20 feet away or whatever. Meanwhile, my cousin Kaylin is over the other 20 feet and we're looking up for a grizzly bear, which is kind of scary. It puts you on edge, but you know that you're with a good group and you know that you're safe. And some of the things that you learn different things from each other. Like this past summer, I learned how to fish with a rod. I'd never done that before. And being able to do that after work and just have a fun time was a good learning experience. And I'm glad that it's a career path that I'm really passionate about and moving towards, because it's a good way to give back to our land, especially here in the valley, with the story of Quinish, of how the glacier here in the valley turned into this great big white whale and saved the Comox people during the flood times. So if it wasn't for that glacier, our Comox people wouldn't be here today.